about the Patrick and Angie books? And now, I mean, once you do this, and if the movie is as enormously successful as you suspect, probably you'll never be able to write anything again that isn't bought for a film.
I don't know. I mean, I can be oddly protective of certain things.
You know, my mind is going Grisham, Crichton, and all, and I'm thinking, oh, Dennis, please be contrary enough.
Oh,
Stay
yeah, I'm
contrary, Dennis.
I'm still contrary
You're not
enough.
all, you know, you're also not that money motivated. I mean, I'm sure you like having it, but I've heard you talk too often about, you know, you've been so poor and so working class, it's not that big a thing with you.
It's really not. You know, the thing that is great about money,
It's power.
no, it's not that it's power, for me. The great thing about money for me is not worrying about money.
But that's what I meant. It's
Yeah.
the power to do whatever you want as you want to do it, not over other people, but really over your own life.
Right. When I see a bill come in, I'm not terrified.
Exactly.
And that used to be the case.
And you can make
so-
choices. You can say, you know, I'm going to go do this or do that, and you
Yep.
don't have to count the cost. And,
And
that's terrific.
Wonderful. And then beyond that, I don't really. It's a strange thing. I mean, I get this a lot. I get people come into my house and they're like, "When are you going to buy a
Bigger house?
A bigger house." You know, they see my car. You know, and they go, "When are you going to like buy a real car?" I'm like, "The dogs like this car." All I really want is creative freedom, which I
Well,
have.
see, what I want is for you to go on writing the books that you want to write and not the book that needs to be made into the movie.
No,
And
that's not
That's why I
gonna-
say my heart just sort of contracts slightly when I read
No.
about Shutter Island. I thought, oh,
No.
but I have faith in you.
No, because it's funny, because the next book, if the next book comes out the way I think it is, if I'm writing the book I think I'm writing, and I won't discuss it because I discussed Missing Dolores and that blew up in my face, but it would be completely impossible to make into a movie. It's going to be so massive. The only way to deal with it would be long form television, and then pretty much there's only one place it could go, which is HBO.
Right.
They're the only ones who could afford it.
Which can actually work very well.
That can work wonderfully, but it just means that I'm writing this such a huge epic and set in, you know, it's a period piece to some extent, and it would just be. I mean, I said, I think I was having a conversation with somebody. I said, conservatively, to film this, we're looking at $150, $160 million. I mean, to convey this world.
Right.
You know, and because it's going to be so massive and take place over so much time, that there's no way you could do it in 2 hours. You probably couldn't do it in 3. So you're looking at
Miniseries.
you know,
Or
yeah.
actually not even mini, but
And
major
then
series.
anybody
yeah.
who knows me knows that or knows my work knows that any miniseries isn't going to be fit for network television. So you're going to have to go, you know. So yeah. So I don't think that'll ever. I think the next few books actually won't be fit for the movies, which will be fine.
What about Patrick, Angie, and Bubba? Are they just resting?
They're resting. I don't know whether they'll come back. I know that if they knock on the door, I will open it up and welcome them in with
Well,
open
you
arms.
always said, you know, from the beginning that they didn't have an infinite life.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, I think you wrote one more book than I expected you to write based on our earlier conversations.
I had to, though, because the end of Gone Baby Gone was so tough on everybody. I just had to give them something. You know, I had to say, including the characters. You know, you learn to love your characters, and you don't want to leave them in the lurch. And
Well, they were in limbo, not just lurch, but real limbo.
Yeah, they were in a real
Yeah.
bad place. And so I just said, let me write one more and see where I can get them. And then so much of the books, that series came from a reactionary place. The first one was written almost as a fan, tiring of reading. At the time, there were the late 80s, there were a lot of, there just seemed to be a lot of books that were about nothing in the genre.
True.
And I was tired of reading books in which the detective went to Hollywood to protect a movie actress so that the writer could essentially write about their experiences when they got a movie deal 2 books before. And I found the books weren't about anything. Not all books, a lot of books were, but I think I read a string of bad ones. And so I wrote Drink Before the War in a way inspired as a reaction to that. Say, let's write about something. Can we, you know,
Hadn't
we
you
write
been
about...
reading like Elroy and Crumley
Yep.
and Burke?
Yeah, absolutely.
And things that were
and
used.
who I still consider, that to me is the trio right there.
Right.
That's the best.
But they did say to you, you know, you could do something with
Yeah,
these novels.
that really opened up my eyes, I think, in a lot of ways too. And so, so then I started Drink Before the War from that perspective. I don't want to be guilty of the thing I started out against. I don't want to become what I behold. I don't want to write a 6th book just because I know the audience is waiting for one. It is the question I get every single night on tour.
Right. Well, that's why I brought it up, because
So,
I thought it was a question that people would
single
like an
night.
answer
And
for.
as so, that is, I can't describe how humbling that is. People say, "Do you get sick of it?" And I said, no, not at all. I'm kind of just absolutely.
You mean the fact that you took people into the lives of characters that
These
are
characters,
so alive to
and
them,
care,
they miss
yeah,
them?
and they care about them so much. These
Yeah.
little characters I created, you know, because I couldn't afford to go out my apartment essentially, and it's just it's so wonderful. And so I'll answer that question honestly, and I will never get sick of answering it. The only thing is I won't change the answer because people want to hear
Sure.
something else.
Here's an insight for you. I've been in business now doing this for 14 years, and
Yeah.
over the course of that, a number of authors whose books I and readers have been extremely fond of have unfortunately died. And I want to tell you, 100% of the reaction of the readers is always, "I'm really sorry about Ross Thomas," but what they really want is it's the character that went into the grave.
Yeah.
When Kate Ross died, everybody felt terrible about Kate, but what they really were mourning was that was the end.
Well,
of
that's
the
good to
cast.
know. Oh, well, that's good to know.
And I'm just saying to you that it's the same thing in a way when you've been writing about Patrick and Angie, and there's that sort of mourning quality. I don't mean that this is a macabre thing or anything. I'm just saying that people get so invested, you know, in this fictional world, the
Right.
landscape, the lives, the characters and all, that when the author either chooses not to write about them or can't write about them because
Yeah.
maybe nothing's coming,
Yep.
or the author dies or whatever it is, for the reader, the tragedy really lies in the
In the
fact that they
characters,
can't
yeah.
be in that world
And
anymore.
that's nice. That is really nice. And I think
And isn't that what you really want it to be all about anyway, as a
Yeah.
fiction writer and as a storyteller?
you want those characters to live, you know?
and
I
that
think that's-
landscape to be
yeah.
so vibrant that people really want to be there with you.
Right, right. But I think also too that I think know to get off the stage. You
Yeah.
know,
No,
know
I
to get
agree.
them off the stage before they wear out their welcome. The guest who'll never leave. You know, that sort of
Sure.
thing. And I don't want to hear people in the stacks of a bookstore 20 years from now. You know, one lady saying to another lady, "Well, you can read that one, but the early ones are so much better."
You know how often we do hear that. It's
Oh
kind
God,
of like thinking,
I've said it. You know, we've all said it.
I
You know.
It's like deciding, you know, if you're a singer, when do you quit? You know, do you go too soon or do you linger on too long or whatever? I mean, there's always that moment.
I did not want to see Michael Jordan play for the Washington Wizards. I didn't want to see Joe Montana play for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Right.
I don't want to see Emmitt Smith play for. Where did he go? He should have retired. Should have hung him up. You know. You end at a peak. You know.
There are often people too. Bernard Cornwell and I, he's a writer who much admires your work.
Yeah.
We're talking about Wellington and Napoleon, and we both agree that the real tragedy for Napoleon was he didn't die at Waterloo.
Yep.
I mean, that would have been the right ending, you know.
Absolutely.
If you were a fiction
Absolutely.
writer, you'd have killed him on the battlefield. Absolutely, you know,
Yeah.
it's not right that he had to go off to St. Helena. Elba was okay
Yeah.
and coming back and,
Yeah.
you know, to
And
Waterloo.
trying
but-
again, yeah.
And I remember years ago, de Gaulle, I mean, I can remember when the war was over. I mean, I was just a little kid and all, but people talking about the fact that de Gaulle really would like to have died for France, you know, and
Yeah.
and not had to go through that sort of, what do you do when the war is over,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Absolutely. That great moment where if they have a parade in Rome and they used to have a man stand beside the general going through the streets whispering in his ear that all glory is fleeting. You know, know when to that this parade, this wonderful parade, this is a high point. Get out now. You know?
Well, and you know what? It's time for us to do that
Right,
here
right.
on this program. Dennis, it's really been a pleasure. Thank
Yeah,
you
this is
so
great,
much for
Barbara,
coming
as
back.
always. Thank you.
Well, it was really my pleasure, and I certainly thank all of you for joining us once again on the Criminal Calendar.